weird. It's a plane. No, it's someone with curls. It's Math Girl. Okay, we're going to be solving for the unknown with triangles. Just a reminder, the acronym SOHCAHTOA reminds us that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. How do we use trig functions to solve for the unknown in triangles? Okay, we're looking at 4a, number 4, and you have this triangle. We know this side is 14. There's not any units. We don't know if it's inches, feet, meters, centimeters. So when there's not any units, you don't have to worry about putting units for your final answer. We're trying to solve for this side. What is the length of this side? And it's a right angle, and you can use trig functions for right triangles. We know that this angle right here is 57 degrees, and we're trying to solve for D. So what you do is, if you're your little man standing at this angle, there's a little man standing at that angle, then you look at which sides do you know. Well, if you're standing at that angle, you know the side that's adjacent to you, and you know the side, or you're wanting the side opposite of you. So looking at this triangle, everything that's labeled, standing here at this angle, you know the adjacent and you're wanting the opposite. Which trig function deals with adjacent and opposite? That would be tangent. So then we can use tangent theta equals opposite over adjacent. So now we can just fill in what we know. Tangent of, we know our angle is 57 degrees, is the opposite side is our unknown, D, and the adjacent side is 14. So we are trying to solve for D. At this point, there's a lot of different ways that you can solve this. My personal favorite is cross multiplication. Anytime you can turn this into a fraction. When you have a fraction set equal to a fraction, you use cross multiplication to solve. Cross multiplication means this times this on one side equals this times this on the other side of your equation, of the equal sign. So on one side you have tangent 57 degrees times 14 equals, that's on one side of your equal sign. On the other side, 1 times d, which is 1d, or just d. Now you use your trig tables or your calculator to turn tangent of 57 degrees into a decimal. We will always, when we're doing trig functions and turning a trig function into a decimal, we will always take it to 4 decimal places. So again, you can either use the trig tables or use your calculator. Tangent of 57 degrees is, to 4 decimals, 1.5399, because I'm taking it to 4 decimal places, times 14 equals D. Now multiply that by 14, and I believe you can, this says to do your answers to 2 decimal places, or I know the book has them to do 2 decimal places. In this book of trig functions will always be taken to 4 decimal places. Everything else can be rounded to 2 decimal places. You'll also see this in the back of the book. This means approximately. So D is approximately, rounding to 2 decimal places, 21.56. And again, I'm not putting any units on it because there are not any units specified on the lengths of the sides on the triangle. So I will not have units, and that symbol in the back of the book and the solutions means approximately. So, alright, now let's look at 4C4. Okay, you notice that you have a radical. If the problem does not state to leave it in radical form, then you can turn all radicals into decimals. But if the problem says to leave it in radical form, you need to leave it in radical form. These problems do not state to leave it in radical form, so I'm going to turn that into a decimal. So square root of 32 is 5.66, just rounding to 2 decimal places. So that's the same thing. Square root of 32 is 5.66. Okay. Now I'm trying to solve for r, so I need to know which trig function to use. If I stand at this angle that's been given, 42 degrees. If I'm a little man standing there, so if I'm standing right there, I know the hypotenuse and I'm looking for the side opposite of me. Okay, so which trig function deals with hypotenuse and opposite? Okay, that would be sine. So therefore I need to use sine theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. So now I'm feeling what I know. Sine of, we know the angle was given as 42 degrees. The side opposite of me is what I don't know, so that's labeled as R. And then the hypotenuse was square root of 32, but we'll use 5.66, turning it into a decimal. Again, I personally like to use cross multiplication only because at some point your unknown could be in the denominator, and when you use cross multiplication, then all your algebra comes out correctly. So cross multiplication means sine of 42 degrees times 5.66 on one side of your equal sign, 1 times R, or just R on the other side. Now you turn your sine of 42 degrees into a decimal to 4 places. You can either use the trig tables or use your calculator. So 0.6691 is sine of 42 degrees times 5.66. So R is equals or approximately, rounding to 2 decimal places, 79. And again, I don't have units because no units were specified in the problem. Okay, now we're looking at 4D1. We have this triangle. We know this side is 30. We know this angle, and we don't know the hypotenuse. So, if I was the little man standing right here at 75 degrees, this side right here is the side adjacent to me, and then this is the hypotenuse. So which trig function deals with adjacent and hypotenuse? That would be cosine. So then it would be cosine theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Fill in what we know. Cosine, we know the angle is 75 degrees. The side adjacent to me is 30. And the hypotenuse, we don't know, that's labeled as U. Again, I like to use cross multiplication. Turn this into a fraction. When you have a fraction set equal to a fraction, you can use cross multiplication. So cosine of 75 degrees times U on one side of your equal sign, and then 1 times 30 on the other side. Now it's just a matter of solving for U. That way you don't ever get confused on when you have to multiply, when you have to divide. Turn cosine of 75 degrees into a decimal to 4 decimal places. You can either use the trig tables or your calculator. Cosine of 75 degrees is 0.2588 times U equals 30. Solving for U, we need to get rid of this. It means divide both sides by 0.2588. That goes away. So then U is 115.92, rounding to 2 decimal places. Okay, so now we're looking at 4D2, and we have this triangle here. We're trying to solve for the hypotenuse of V. So if I was that little man standing right there at the angle that I know, then if I'm standing there, this is the side opposite of me, and this is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse always across from the 90-degree angle. So which trig function deals with opposite and hypotenuse? So that would be sine. So therefore I have sine theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. Fill in what I know. Sine, I know the angle is 28 degrees. The side opposite of me is square root of 9, and then the hypotenuse is V. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn square root of 9 into a decimal, because this doesn't tell me I have to leave it in radical form. So that is 3. Square root of 9, 3. So making that into a fraction, because then I'm going to use cross multiplication. You don't have to use cross multiplication, it's just my preferred way that I like to solve these problems. So on one side of my equal sign is sine 28 degrees times v, and then the other side of the equal sign, 1 times 3, 3. Now I can turn this into a decimal to 4 decimal places. You can either use your calculator or use the trig tables. So sine of 28 degrees is 0.4695, rounding to 4 decimals, times v equals 3. Solving for v, which means I need to get rid of this, divided over. So then v is approximately, or I'll just always use the equal sign. Rounding to 2 decimals, it would be, here I'm getting 3.38977. So rounding to 2 decimals would be 6.39. Rounding there, that says round that up, so 6.39.